Hey everybody, happy Thursday, Teaching Tip Thursday, one of my favorite days of the week. Hope you're having a splendid week so far. It's pretty chilly here in Northwest Arkansas, so that's never fun, but all right, let's jump in. So Jamie asks, I asked this on one of Rachel's lives. Oh, I got to talk about the cover. So Language Lessons 11 cover, that's not the cover. The other night we actually were just having fun with some of our covers. And so that's a picture of my son, Brandon, from when Kristen was going through breast cancer. And he put on one of her wigs to kind of lighten the mood. And that picture has stuck. And so I thought, well, that looks like an 11th grader in some areas. So it would be a good picture to throw up there. So, unfortunately, that's not the picture that's going. I'm getting outchosen on that one. So outvoted. So, all right. Instead, I think the picture of my 15-year-old is going to be on that cover. So, Jamie says, I asked this one on Rachel's Lives, and she gave good advice, but I also wanted to see your opinion. Do you feel like doing honors courses for high school is a good idea? Not really necessary. I'm learning how to even do it. How to take this is I could add extra courses like an extra paper to do honors. My understanding is I don't have to officially apply for anything. My husband doesn't think it's necessary because he and I both graduated without them. By the way, thank you for answering my question. On the last live about my second grade daughter being resistant to writing, you and Kristen both had good advice. I wasn't able to watch live that time. All right, so Jamie, I think a lot depends on the educational goals, what's important as a family. I would say masterbooks isn't necessarily targeting families that want to do honors courses, but you can certainly make it an honors course, like you said, where you make it more rigorous and use that as a foundation. What I would recommend, and I do this for anybody, regardless, as your children get older, they're going to have interest. So let me explain this. I have one that turned 18 yesterday. He's graduating this year. He's going to go to Honduras and spend 6 months in a mission field with my cousin who is there. And then he's coming back and he's interested in electrical work, probably electrical engineering in an industrial environment. However, I had an electrician there. And so I said to the electrician, came to the house, and I said, hey, my son is here, and he introduced him. And I said, do you hire? And he did. And then I said, what track would you give him or recommend for him if he's interested in being an electrician, but more from an electrical engineering standpoint? And so he just gave us fantastic advice. And I think if we hadn't asked him, we could have enrolled him into a program or tried to get him a job. And he's like, if you get a job with me and you work for 2 years and then you don't, you limit your options because nobody wants to hire somebody who didn't go through the 4 years or the 8,000 hours of training. But if you want to go that direction, you're better to go to school for it and get the degree. So he really helped give us some direction. I've told the story in the past about my daughter who wanted to go into missions work, and so she was looking to be a doula, but she looked at going to a Bible college, and the Bible college, at the last minute, I said, we need to check with an organization that serves that area of the world. So we look it up, and then I reached out and I said, hey, what would be required for my daughter? And they're like, well, definitely don't go to Bible college. Because if you want to go to that part of the world and they look at your background and you have a Bible college degree, they'll know. So you want to do English as a second language or something like that. So it was just very interesting because that was what was important. So I say all this to say, if depending on what type of college you want to go to, what you want to have for your student to be prepared. What career, do a little homework, backward engineer their education. So instead of just kind of blindly hoping we cover all the bases, find one or two things that they may be interested in, and then look at the requirements. If you go to almost any university and type in, what's required to enroll here, you'll be able to find, what the transcript should be, what courses should be on the transcript, what the grade average is, all of that type of stuff. There are other options too. Sometimes you can go to a junior college, then transfer into another college if your grades are good and you've proven that you can do the college work. So there's a lot of options. But the way I would start is backwards, do it at that level and see like what's the purpose of wanting honors courses. And then if that's a necessity to get into a college you want, then by all means, you kind of have that decision made for you. So that would be my recommendation. Mostly interested in writing. She has no interest in college, but at 13, also hard to know for sure what she thinks. Now will be when she's 18. So just having all the bases covered. Yeah, so the writing would depend, right? Like what type of writing does she want to do? And what is the expertise that she's wanting to do. Now, if it's going to be like fictional work and that type of thing, a lot of that is there's a whole track for getting recognized, getting things published. In this age, things are so crazy because you can write and publish your own material now without a publisher. So you can self-publish. Now, it can be more costly and you don't have the you don't necessarily have the exposure that you do when you work with a publisher, because we work with a lot of businesses and distributors. Our network is bigger. But to me, that's one of the best things you can do is just start putting work together and publishing it and seeing what's out there and then what's the success as an independent writer. That's one thing I would do. The other thing, it might be good to enroll in a program somehow that teaches, that helps develop, or even a mentorship would be something. We generally look at a book proposal, which would have a table of contents, a couple of chapters, a little bit about the platform, because platforms are really important for what we do. And with a fictional author, we don't necessarily do good work with fiction. We do better with apologetics and curriculum and that type of thing. So ours is dependent heavily on platforms. But yeah, so I guess if she wants to write children's books or adult fiction, junior fiction, whatever, it would be start looking at people who've done that and then how did they get there, and even interview them and find out what did you do to become a writer, and then that shows you the track that you would do. So an honors course may not necessarily take you there, right? It just may be a lot of extra work, and that work could be spent developing the trade and the skill and the networking that would be helpful. So hopefully that's helpful, Jamie. Again, everything we talk about here is my 2 cents. Eat the meat, spit out the bones. Holy Spirit trumps everything I say. Not intended to be legal advice or anything like that. More just my 2 cents from as we approach life the way we would from our family. Sarah G., did you show this to your son? I did. Brandon actually approved and said it was okay to show the picture, Sarah. So, yeah. Stacy, I'm going to be able to make this meeting. Yay. Thank you. Glad you're here, Stacy. My question, kind of behavior, I guess. My son was using a different curriculum for language arts, completely disservice to him. I'm now using language lessons for living education and love it. Awesome. When looking into Wowza Brain, he was struggling with doing specific sounds, such as doing things like putting the behind the D sound. I went ahead and started at level 1. He complains about having to stand up. He complains about having to do the work. He sits there and tries to argue with me every day we go to do it. This is very frustrating for me, but I just tried to be encouraging and keep frustrations to myself. It got so bad yesterday I had to tell him, let's stop and do it later, and wait a few hours before I had the courage to be encouraging and get it done. It's almost like he's just not wanting to do it, so he's fighting me tooth and nail. I don't really want to place to place in punishment because I don't know if that's going to be proper motivation to get him to do it. I have offered the dice idea to give him his favorite activity, but it hasn't motivated him yet. Any advice or help? Okay. I think a couple of things that I would latch onto, Stacy, in what you're saying. You're saying that he's struggling with specific sounds, and so that's what you're trying to fix. Well, correcting something requires energy in the brain, and so it could be related to the fact that you're actually stretching and causing his brain to have to work a little harder than he would anticipate. And some of that may be, maybe to have a conversation with him and say, listen, I'm really trying hard to work with you, to help you understand that you have some areas like with your sounds and stuff like that. So this isn't, let's work together as a team to correct the issue that's showing up, right? Like, that can happen in anything. So it's not a deficiency. It's more, we're just we're building a muscle here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. We're building a muscle here. It's a brain muscle. That muscle is weak, while the brain is actually helping us develop that brain muscle. And I want you to work with me. Think of it as I'm here almost like a coach, but you're the athlete, right? You're the one on the field, or you're the soldier, whatever. And I'm helping coach you to achieve the goal, to build that muscle that you need to build. You've got to work with me. Otherwise, you're going to be a mental weakling. You're going to not have you're going to have, like, you just have to build the skills and see if there's a way, like, do you see a spark at all? Do you see anything where he's motivated by that? That's one way. Sometimes as well, set it up where maybe you do it at a time that dad is near. I know with some of my kids, 2 of my kids were expelled from homeschool and became my issue. It wasn't, believe me, Kristen is 100% capable. However, sometimes some personalities the kids know how to push the buttons or trigger or whatever. And so in those instances, this is actually why we're so involved in homeschooling, is because I got a call from Kristen one time when I was out of town and said, I'm done. I've expelled her from my homeschool. She's yours. Figure it out. And we did. And it was unique, right? But we got through it. And I was able to step in. It sounds dramatic. It didn't feel dramatic at the time, and I don't think it was as dramatic. But that student, and Kristen was still very involved in the education and all of that. But it's not I'm the man, I'm the dad, I'm like, wait till your dad comes home. It's not that way. It's more sometimes you choose a coach or something that's better suited to the personality or the learning style. You understand? So for 2 of my kids, it just, they did better kind of with the structure that I had, and that freed Kristen up to focus on the kids that were doing exceptionally well with what she was doing. So that's one thing too, Stacey. You could actually say, I'm going to do this at a time when dad is here, and see how the response is. Like, you got to growth hack and test a lot of different things. And then when you see something's working, go harder in that direction. When you see it's not working, go harder in that direction. But what he needs to understand is, if I said you need to lift a heavy weight and you can't do it, how do we build that weight? We have to begin building the muscles to do that. This is what's happening with the brain. Our kids are building mental muscle to be able to accomplish the goals that they have. And so they've got to invest themselves to do it. But just like we don't like to necessarily go work out all the time, same deal here, in that there's the brain just tries to conserve calories, and you don't think about learning as burning calories, but it absolutely does. Okay. Kim Now Kelly, any tips for helping kids master the times tables? Ouch. It's difficult, especially kids who are struggling with short-term memory. You're asking a lot out of them to do that. However, one thing we did, I wish I had developed it better. Kristen and I had a gentleman who worked for us when we owned Pennywise Learning, and we actually developed, I had a kid who was struggling with it, and so I created a flashcard software. And that software was awesome and did a great job of helping my kids all learn. And so what it would do is present the problem. It would also speak the problem. So it would say 2 plus 2 equals. And then they would put the answer in, and then it graded that. And so they would do different drills and different levels of complexity. And the flashcards was just a really good way of doing that. I know that there are other software. I remember when I was a principal of a school, there used to be a software called like Math Blaster. There was Racehorse Math or something, where you would actually try to race your horse by answering the questions. Different things like that. The gamification can help. Our kids in school, when we had somebody working with them on a routine basis with the math facts, that was actually they went up in skill. And my son and my daughter, one taught himself addition, subtraction, multiplication, addition using the flashcards. The other, it just helped them do that. Because then he had core memory with Math Blaster. How funny that we all talk about core memories and whatnot, but yep. Math Blaster and Oregon Trail. That's the Oregon Trail generation, right? Okay. Faith and Grace Homeschool. The homeschool year has not gone as planned. Been doctor appointments for 2 of my sons, holidays, house projects, changing curriculum. We are behind. I want to cry. Okay. We switched this year from another curriculum to masterbooks. Felt like I needed to go back to the other curriculum, but because of my biblical beliefs being different than that curriculum company, I went back to masterbooks. So all the curriculum swapping didn't help. Now it's January. I feel lost and defeated. I put my kids back a level because I felt they needed to review the material again and be stronger in it. I'm thinking of just doing language, math, Bible reading, and just get through this year. I'm struggling. Any tips on how to start over at this point and get motivated to have my heart back into homeschooling again? Also to stop being a perfectionist and the delusion that every homeschool day is magical. Tiffany. All right, here we go, Tiffany. Ready? All right. Locker room, halftime talk. Number one, we have to step back. It's a privilege to be able to homeschool our kids. And what an honor we have in this day and age to be able to do that. And we're called by the Lord to raise up our children in the way they should go, to not place them underneath the counsel of the ungodly. And so I think sometimes we have to get back to the fact that when we're doing this, we're actually creating and storing up for ourselves a treasure, right? Like this is, you're investing not only in your family, you're investing in a legacy, but we're doing this for the glory of God. So when I raise my kids in the nurturing and admonition of the Lord, it's to bring glory and honor to the Lord who created us, who has purpose for us, who knows us and understands us. So sometimes we need to get away from, I homeschool because I want to protect them. I homeschool because of whatever. We homeschool because we are stewards of what God has given to us. And it says children are a blessing and a gift from God. And so he's given us a gift and a blessing, and we steward that opportunity and we invest in them because we have high expectations of what God will do. Over the course of this year, we'll be talking about the power of the seed. And Scripture says, we reap what we sow. And in our children, we're sowing seeds of truth. We're sowing seeds of confidence and faith in the Lord. We're sowing the gospel. We're sowing the message of Jesus Christ and the hope that we have. So that's our why. And we need to hold on to the why. Okay. Give yourself room for growth. Right? There is no such thing as perfection. Perfection is an absolute waste of time. The goal is we're raising and training our children. And so it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to kind of second guess ourselves, to flip flop, to make some mistakes. So what? So what? Like the only thing that's bad is if we keep making the same mistake over and we don't learn from our mistakes. It may take us a little longer. But in this case, what I'm going to say is, kudos to you for following the conviction of the Holy Spirit to place your children into the curriculum that you feel He led you to. So that's a good thing. So give yourself credit that you've done that. Now, beyond that, just start making sure that the basics are done. Like you said, math, language, are they working through that? Are they comfortable with that? And then from there, we can begin adding additional subjects to get to that level. I wouldn't beat yourself up over this. I would say I need a reset. So what if I've wasted a little bit of time, or there's what would you say? You're learning, right? We learn, think about walking too. Okay, so when I learn to walk, or a child learns to walk, what do? They stand up, they lose their balance, and they fall. They get themselves up. Over time, they become much more confident in their decisions and the way that they self-correct, autocorrect, and catch their balance and walk. So in this journey, think of yourself as a child walking, and so you lost your balance, you got up, you lost your balance, you got up, but this time you're kind of catching yourself before you lose your balance. So that gives you the opportunity to kind of say, okay, I'm getting this. I'm getting my sea legs, and I'm understanding this is important. And then, you make sure that you also make it a priority, because yes, life happens and it's easy to get off track. And sometimes we just need to say, starting Monday, we get back to school and we get back on track. And you have these resets. We've been in seasons the last few years where it seems like we've had to have a lot of resets with our two sons. It's life. It's life. But the thing is, they're learning, they're growing, they're gaining skills. So I would breathe. I would say, I'm doing this as unto the Lord. And then, most important, is asking Him for the wisdom and the strength to accomplish what He's called you to. His word says that He will give us wisdom when we ask for wisdom. And so I would just say, Lord, I really need your assistance. I used to do an algebra equation when I pastored. That I would, let's see, x plus 10 equals 100. Okay. I don't know if you can see it, but basically x plus 90 equals 100. 90, if 90% is what I have to bring to something, my deficiency is to rely on the Lord to bring 100% of what He's called me to. When I'm at 50%, so today, if you're feeling like you're at 50%, ask Him to be the sufficiency of what you need to be what He's called you to be. Ask Him to provide the 50% that you need to accomplish that. If you only have 10%, then ask Him to be the sufficiency, the 90%, to bring you to 100% of what He's called you to, believing that He's a God who answers prayer and does what He's called us to something. He will provide for us. He's Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. And He's not a genie in a bottle, but if He's called you to homeschooling and you feel that, don't hesitate to lean into that and ask Him to be the sufficiency. So Lord, I'm at 10, I'm at 20. I need 90, 80, 70% more strength and power and wisdom to accomplish this that you've called me to. please provide it, and then be open to the provision that he provides. All right. Well, hopefully, Faith and Grace, there's some encouragement for you. Amanda, spelling question. Look for advice on how to make my spelling words stick a little better. Tend to forget the rules. Sometimes say learning spelling words can be boring. Looking for a way not to make it boring and help him with continued learning spelling rules. Thank you. We're on level 4. Take advantage of the worksheets. And yeah, Kristen's talked about this in the past. Some students are just good spellers and some aren't. And so it can be a challenge with students. I think a lot comes from practice. One of the things that I like language lessons, and it approaches in different ways. One of the things that I also like about writing strands was when they're writing, if there's 1 or 2 words that they're missing, those are the words that you focus on. And so I think that that's kind of cool to incorporate as well, is maybe they're messing up certain words in its routine, then add that to the spelling list that they have, and just until you see improvement in those words, and then it's not overwhelming. Cyprus, will there be an updated edition of Meet the Chief since we have 47th president with a new VP enjoying the book? It's a good question. We need to look at that. I know we just did an update. I think we did an update to that, but we may need to look at that. Yeah, thank you. Julie C., I have an advanced reader. All right. She's 5 and reading chapter books in one sitting. Woo. She particularly transitioned to silent reading, where she can read most of it in her head until she comes out with a more difficult word that needs to sound out. The problem is that when she's reading to me for school, I've noticed she's become haphazard with it. She'll skip words or guess at them. Sometimes she'll mumble where I can't hear her. I've listened in to her reading to her little sister when she decides to read out loud to herself, and it seems to only do this with me. I try to pick interesting things to read and keep it fun, but get the impression she's bored of reading to me now, that she really needs help. Any suggestions on how to approach the issue, or if I should approach it and then be content with the fact she's reading, even if I'm doing it with her? This is specifically when we are reading literature. I usually don't have the same problem when I ask her to read directions for work pages and she brings me something she found interesting and wants to read. This is interesting. So it seems like whenever she's reading to you, she just kind of rushes through it and whatnot. Here's my gut. My gut is I probably would say be careful not to create a negative experience around it. If you could preface it beforehand and say, I'm going to have you just read this paragraph to me. It's really important that you read it nice, clear, loud, and good. And if you do, then we'll stop at that point. If not, then we'll do another paragraph, and we're gonna kind of keep practicing if we need to practice. But if you prove to me that you don't need to practice, then we won't do it. That way, it's in her court to get it right, but you're also not creating a negative where we've attached discipline and cortisol and all of the negative emotions to the reading. If you're seeing her read well in others instances, you know she can do it, that it's something else. So I think just saying, let's do it, let's do this, one paragraph, you get it good, and then you're on your own, I think is a good way to do it. So, okay. The RF family. Daughter, child number 6, is 7 and struggles to progress in reading and still isn't comprehending the basic addition, wondering if it might be her personality. She has extremely large imagination and is completely happy playing independently. Maybe it's not her ability to understand her work, but rather her desire to do something else. She may grow out of it. I'm not concerned at this point, just curious if there's a connection. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. 7 years old, especially when they're younger, it seemed to be something that we saw was they have access to so much more information. So I guess that would be something I would probably just kind of keep an eye on if she's imagination. But there is a place here where she has to start learning how to do things that maybe aren't as self-directed, like schoolwork, and make the transition from play to responsibility. Like, I'd be curious, how does she do chores? Does she fight you with chores? If you give a basic chore, does she fight you with that? Does she struggle there? Or is she able to just stop her play, go do a chore, and then come back? And then the other component of understanding work, reading can be a challenge, and yeah, basic addition. Every child's so different at those age. I guess I would just really kind of watch. So that's fighting chores. Homeschooling Mama says that hers fights chores. Yeah. Sometimes I don't think it hurts to force an issue where it's like, okay, you're doing this. I'm going to make you stop and go do chores. Why? Because you need to learn how to transition, how to self-correct, how to control your attitude, go do the chore and come back. And I can just throw this in at any time. And it's training. Again, it's brain training. Because are you really emotionally intelligent if you can't stop what you're doing and make a transition and you're going to melt down every time? Emotional intelligence is the ability to navigate challenges, right? And so that transition is you're helping them navigate something of stopping something, going and doing something, coming back to it. Because think about what it looks like as an adult when they don't transition well. And sometimes when I would see this in our kids, I would on purpose force the issue, and until we had worked through it. And it's uncomfortable and nobody wants to go through it. And I get that, but if it's like any kind of training, right? You've gotta invest yourself in the training to get the reward. Cypress, ideas on how to help an 8-year-old girl reframe her opinion of herself. She likely has some learning differences, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and will occasionally say things like, I'm not smart enough for level 3, or I'm on level 2 because I'm not capable. No one in our family says anything like this to her ever. She is the youngest and well-loved by her siblings, and of course my husband and I. I love tips on how to help her. All right, Cypress. I'm going to borrow from a movie. 2 mice fall into a bucket of milk. 1 mouse gives up and drowns. The second mouse keeps swimming until the milk turns to butter and the mouse climbs out of the bucket. The moral of the story: don't give up. I am thankful in my life that I am not that I've had challenges when it came to school, and that I found ways to get things done. I think in many ways that gave me confidence that no matter what the challenge you give me, I will figure out how to get it done. I may have to swim longer and harder than anybody else to get out of this bucket, but I'm not giving up. Now, I may also resist you on things, and I may challenge things, and I may be a handful at times, but I'm not giving up. And so my brand became very young. Okay, so I can't color in the lines. I don't really care about coloring in the lines. There's little girls who do, and so they can color in lines. I'm not always going to excel in things, right? But there are things that I have that I do excel in. And so, okay, so in this case, in dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, oftentimes are associated with different frameworks of the brain that can be amazing. If you look at successful people who have struggled with dyslexia, wow. Like, it's not a limiting factor. It's a challenge in a box that says this is what people should do and how they should do it and all of that. But if you step outside of that and say, yeah, but look at people who overcame that, who fell into the bucket and just kept going until they found a way to get out. That's the place that you have opportunity with your daughter. So I would say we all going to have challenges, right? Some people, I laugh and say, I'm glad I wasn't born pretty because it caused me to have to work harder. I'm glad I wasn't born the smartest because I had to be clever. I can sell almost anything, but I don't necessarily enjoy math, right? I mean, so what? Like, I've done okay. And helping our kids recognize God made you who you are and he equipped you with everything you need. And guess what? If he calls you to something bigger than you, he'll meet you there. He'll provide for you as Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. But let's say we're not giving up. So if help her embrace the fact that the challenges make us tougher. Again, I'm going to go back to lifting weights and muscle. We lift weights, and it builds muscle. Why? The weight is a stress. It's tension. It's tearing down to build and make stronger. Our challenges in life, they're not handicaps. These are things that actually give us opportunity to be stronger. And helping our kids know, okay, if the Lord's giving you a challenge, then you have the opportunity to be stronger. You can use this as an opportunity to get out of the bucket. So now I had to reframe things a little bit, but it helped me, right? Like why I sat next to the teacher in every class and through elementary school. I'm pretty confident that usually they had all the other kids were in a row, and the teacher would recognize me and say, that there is a leader. And I'm confident of that because when I would get called down to the principal's office, the first thing the principal would ask me is, Randy, what are you thinking? And he wanted to know, what am I thinking? And so I could explain to him exactly what I was thinking. And the teacher would put me right there so that they could observe me. The other kids, they didn't stand out in the class. I did stand out in the class. And so these teachers, they would watch, they would observe, they would tell me, I'm keeping my eye on you, because I attracted a lot of attention because they were learning. I was mentoring my teachers all the way through elementary school. And I could have looked at that other ways. It wouldn't have been healthy. It was healthier for me to think, you set me next to your desk to co-lead. I was vice president of the classroom and also a mentor to the teacher. So that's the kind of mindset I would hope that your kids also take in your classroom. Plans for additional printing of cursive practice books. Julie, that's a really good question. I think we do need some additional practice books. So I hope so. All right. Let's see. Caitlin loves the cover. That's funny. All right. Millie, I'm looking into using language lessons for my youngest daughter for high school next year. She has struggled a bit with passing writing. Does the high school level either teach or at least review structure and process of writing a solid paragraph and into longer essays? I assume that skill has already been mastered. Millie, I believe that there is additional instruction in that. I'm not 100% certain on it, just what the scope and sequence is. But if you look at the lessons, the previews online, there should be a scope and sequence or a table of contents that'll show you what it is, what the concepts are that they're teaching. So, awesome. All right, Desiree. Hey, Desiree, definitely a gem. Well, Desiree, you have one of those gems, and so you understand that it's all about framing. But here's the deal. I remember thinking back, and as I look back on my academic career, I'm so thankful that the Lord directed the steps the way He did. And, when I went to college, Kristen graduated a year early. We went to college together, and she was brilliant. I was thankful I had her. She helped me immensely through school. I ended up in a remedial writing course, and that writing course was transformational. Like, this teacher was just the bomb. She helped me so much with my writing skills and and the value of that. And then, I ended up in a position where I was a project manager and I had to do a lot of diffusing issues and that type of thing. And the Lord has directed my steps all throughout that were perfectly aligned with what He was wanting to do. Everyone that's listening, God is amazing. He orders our steps. He cares intimately about us. When His scripture says that all things work together for good for those of us who love Him, called according to His purpose, He's not lying. Like, He really cares about you, and He cares about your children. And you may look at your children, you may say, this kid is just not getting it. Or you may be, wow, this kid is God's gift to creation, like my parents probably did. Either way, it's absolutely amazing how God can direct our steps and how He can help us and how He can lead us down in ways we would never imagine. So many testimonies of people when the Lord calls. Think about Moses, right? Moses is like runaway. Moses has a speech impediment. Moses is like not after Moses' failure. You would think, why would God call him to go back to Egypt to stand before Pharaoh and lead the children of Israel out of Egypt? Look at all his perfections. I'll tell you why. Because God delights in being our sufficiency in the deficiencies of man. And He gets glory when that happens. And so in my life, as I look at my life and I look at the people who cursed me with my level of intelligence or the challenges I had or the fact that I would have not been paid attention in school and all of the little things, right? It didn't matter because He is glorified today in the fact that I'm president of a publishing company, that I've raised and fed and clothed 9 kids, that I'm still married to my best friend. Like, all of that brings glory and honor to Him far beyond how incredibly awful I did in school. So just an encouragement for those of you who have little Randys. You need prayer and intercession, but God is good. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to see if I got any more that came in. Meg wants to know my favorite book of the Bible. Proverbs. Proverbs is my favorite book. I have verses that I hold dear throughout the Bible. Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with thee, for I will uphold thee with a victorious right hand. My strong verse. Genesis 15:1, fear not, for I am your abundant compensation. I'm messing it up, but Genesis 15:1 would be one. Of course, Romans 8:28, all things work together for good for those of us who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Isaiah 53, I think, that all your children would be known of the Lord, taught of the Lord. How great would be the peace of your children. I'm botching them and paraphrasing them. Proverbs 3, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. I have verses that I've anchored my life to that are very valuable. And when you go through a season, I love just getting in the Word and finding these verses that I will hold on to. I will pray those verses. I will hold that verse. And there are portions of my Bible that if you went through my Bible, you would see the challenges, the victories, the struggles. You would know when you get to Isaiah that we were struggling with miscarriages, and the Lord had given us a promise that he would bless us and increase us. He would tell us to enlarge the place of your tent, that the reproach of our widowhood would be remembered no more. And then you come to places like Isaiah 41:10. I went into the insurance industry. I was having to do some really hard things, stretching myself, cold calling. I had quit my job. I had 2 kids and one on the way. And the Lord just said, "Fear not, for I am with thee." I mean, all through my Bible, there are scriptures that I would hold on to that are just where the Lord has spoke to me, met me in that place. And it has such, as I go back through and I've made notes. I have a Bible that, from when I was probably 24, that is my go-to Bible for seasons like that. And that's what I hold on to. So, all right. Let's see. Angela Thomas says, looking for early reader books for my kindergarten who just started reading something similar to the old Dick and Jane books from when I was a kid. Does Masterbooks offer anything like that? Sort of not. We do have the new book that's coming out that's like the readers. We have some readers. We do have some like When I See a Rainbow, The Very Best Plan, The Remarkable Rescue, that are designed for younger readers, but not necessarily the tiered readers like the Dick and Jane series. Okay, last one. CJ Fish. My daughter's best friend has lately started trying to convince her that same-sex marriage is okay, even though her family goes to church. She says they are Christian. She has invited my daughter over for a sleepover, but we're feeling uncomfortable with exposing to more of this perspective and others that could be toxic to her while in their home. I guess I'm looking for advice on how to navigate this tricky situation. She's 10, and I still want to carefully control her close friendships because I feel she's very impressionable. These girls have been friends since 3 years old, discussing this in the book club, but I thought I would throw it out there as well. All right, I'll tell you how we handled this. We don't do sleepovers. So our kids have never been able to sleep over at somebody's house, and we've been doing this for a lot of years. I hold that to be still a very good piece of wisdom. And I think back to the sleepovers I had. It was never necessarily a good thing. And I'm like, we can be friends during the daytime, but at night we're home base. And sometimes our kids have had other kids sleep over at our house. And in those cases, I want it to be very public and know what's going on. But it's not even, don't even ask. It's just a set rule in our family, don't even ask. So we don't have to approach it every time, even if they're close friends. So that's number one. We just don't do that. Second is, as your children get older, relationships that once worked may not work again because every family allows different things. And so when I look back at when our children were young, as our children grew and the other children were exposed to different things, or you just saw families making different choices for them, those relationships didn't last. So we probably became more calloused the farther along we went and the more children we had. It was harder with the first kids to see relationships of they were such good friends when they were babies, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, they're dressing different. They have exposure to different music. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. And even with like-minded families, it's a challenge. So Yeah, I feel for where you are. I think it's important sometimes to address worldview that let's like read the beginning of Romans because it's very clear how God feels about certain sin. And so let's the family believes this and I'm sure you've done some of that. But you have to do some damage control because the friend is trying to convince of a worldview that doesn't align with your worldview. But at that age, you have the right to command, right? We coach, but with the right to command. And if I see somebody is trying to indoctrinate my child, I don't care if they're older or younger, I reserve the right to intervene because that's not what we believe. And not only do we not believe it, but we believe that it's damaging to the person, and we believe that allowing somebody to do that or give our approval to do that is actually not an act of love. And so in order for us to show love and compassion, we would almost be compelled to speak out differently, and that's going to challenge them. So, but for a 10-year-old, it's awful hard to be in a relationship with somebody who's trying hard to indoctrinate them into believing something that goes against the values that you're working to teach, which is why we homeschool. So that's what I would recommend. Awesome. All right, good. Well, there's been good discussion here too. All right, guys. Hey, well, I pray you all have a fantastically blessed weekend and that the sun comes out and warms things up. And so appreciate everybody's involvement here and being part of things. Definitely good. All right. God bless you guys. And we will talk to you. Next week. We won't have next week, but then I'm working really hard to make sure we're staying on track. So, all right. God bless you guys. Talk to you later.